Peace.
There was only pain. That's why, baby, I love you. Baby, I love you.
Yeah, y'all. Just cutting some drums today. Trying to build some kits for a forthcoming little Metal Gear project I'm working on. Nothing major. Nothing to write home about. When you're saving onto discs, you got to be real precise about exactly how much time you're using. 'Cause you got 10 seconds.
Baby, I love you. Baby, I love you. Baby, I
There we go. There's anything I could do to I'm just establishing what channels are dead. They've all been chopped as much as they can. So after I got my main samples in here, I've been dropping drums for a long time, but even after I got my main samples in here, I got to go back and find some other drums that I can add. So I just want to, make sure I got enough space left, because if I'm working with 10 seconds, I got all my chops. I got to leave at least 2 seconds so I can put in as many drum sounds as. .8 seconds. That ain't gonna do it. So then I got to play the surgery game, right? So if I got, a tiny bit of seconds left and I need to fit a snare and a kick in there, maybe an 808 teeny tiny little hi-hat, the least amount of space, even if I speed everything up and then slow it down later, that I'm going to need is probably about 1.4 seconds. And I got 0.8 left. That's the problem with these fucky things. Unless you save all the parameters, you got to start from scratch when you want to load up some new sounds. Excellent. Segment length. Start with 2. Little technical difficulties, guys. I just brought this back from the studio last week and I had set everything up or do any kind of run through. So we'll see what I come up with. Shortcut there. So in case you were wondering, I'll try to talk. I'm pretty tired. I'll try to talk through some of this. Whenever you're recording on an SP-1200, it's always kind of wise to take your sequencing parameters, and instead of it being like 85 to 100 or something, whatever a normal hip hop track would be, you're going to be concentrating on maybe doubling it, because it gives it gives some space to the amount of actual positions that you can throw samples in. So I've got this at 161. That's entirely too fast. So what I got to do now is I've got to kind of measure the samples that I'm using against that that metronome. Four, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 5, uh. In case you haven't noticed, that's a different version of Nautilus. Bring some out of there, because that's a possible second to add on to my sampling time. I'm making all my truncations permanent. See what I got left over when I'm done. If I got enough for. See if I got any left for some drums. Started out with 0.8 seconds left. You gotta have about 1.4 to have a good set of drums, like a kick, snare, a hi-hat, maybe a little 808. You need about 2 seconds left. If I speed up everything before I take the sample, that'll be enough time. So I gotta take like every little hair of time that I got left. So I'm chopping everything to death. And the saying goes, you know, find out later if you're actually able to sequence it. Because if you're not, you're fucked. Because sometimes it required that little bit of sample at the end, so you can actually get it to sequence properly, and you can't get it back. But if you want drums, you gotta take that risk. So I thought that shit would be dope. Just get like hard ass fucking drums and take the original Nautilus, loop it in a way that's not usually looped. And blend in some of that that other rare version of Nautilus over top of it. Sequence in like a little heavy bass, filtered out bass line. And then just chop the shit. I just get some strong ass pounding drums in there, you know, strong drums, and just kind of find a way to have that choppy flow from sequence to sequence. When you do the song mode, really fuck it up and shit. Like the and I gotta find some smooth but fucking punchy ass drums to throw back there. You know what I mean? Like kind of like MOP style. You know, something that's gonna like really get that bass. That, you know, just get that shit to just kind of, you know, punch it up real good. But now it's like, so I'm looking at the seconds I got left here, and it's like, fuck. I got 1 second left, so that bought me 0.2 seconds. All that shit that I just did for the last 15 minutes. I got one more to, I think, permanently truncate. That's truncated. All right, I didn't cut the ends off of that one, so that's great. So 1.1 seconds. Gonna be a tight squeeze.
You brought sunshine to my sky when there was rain. Brought beauty to a world that was plain. You brought joy, there was only pain. That's why, baby, I love you. Baby, I love you. Baby, I love you.
So what I do, I save, son of a bitch. I save my sounds over. I put it in the pile of beats that need fucking drums and chords and need to be built. And I kind of got a pile like that. So when I got a night where I just kind of feel like the only shit that I got in me is adding some drums and maybe getting a little creative. You know what I mean? Like I just, I've got a lot in me. I can save that little pile. So maybe I can like make some progress, even if it's not my best day. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like automotive shit. I just like automatically just kind of start throwing them drums in, kind of get into it. And so I keep a pile of these with just kind of like song ideas. You know what I mean? So it's like that's a Bob James Nautilus flip where I use the alternate version of Nautilus that really nobody's ever heard or not too many people have heard. Blend the two together, get some kick-ass drums, and then what I'll end up doing, I don't know if you can see it from here, but I got in the absence of my S950, I've got a S2000 over here. And so that S2000 allows me to take longer samples. And so the idea there would be, of course, to take the longer samples in here, like take some longer jazzy ass samples, maybe 15 seconds, something like that. And then I find a way. Hey, peace, man. What's happening, MV? Yeah. With more memory. That's true. So, yeah, man. So I what I do is I take these skeletons, man, like that little Bob James thing, it's not shit, but at the same time, if I've got these kind of like these little, these songs that are just kind of ready to go. So I could take some shit like this, just, real, put that low in the background, kind of have that Bob's James. That'd be like the skeleton of a joint. You know what I mean? So that's just like, everybody fucking knows the sample, but you kind of run that in the bottom and then kind of find a way to throw some other layered samples over it that would surprise people. Kind of like you're listening to the background, like, what is that Nautilus back there? So that's just kind of like building the, the background of, how like Grand Poobah, they did Step to the Rear, and you can hear the Tramp sample in the background, like you can hear that brant, dum 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 brant. But like when he used it, they kind of had the horns to kind of like take that little cut off the sample. So the way when he used that shit, it was way different than like when others had used Tramp, because mostly people just kind of flow with the way the sample sounds. He took that little funky like damn. And Fu was on arrival. Raising again, he's on arrival. And so, that's kind of like the idea here with these. I kind of leave these skeletons here, and these skeletons are kind of waiting for me. So when I have like a surprise moment, like get a dope ass sample, I'll kind of hook it up in my head like, oh shit, I got that little landing pad just waiting for me. I can put that over the Bob James idea. Just kind of keep things interesting, mixing things up. Yeah, man, the S950 is kind of my home base kind of thing because that's what I grew up using more. I really didn't use a lot of rack samplers back in the day, but I used the S950 a hell of a lot more than I used the MPC6. I used the MPC 60 and 62 a hell of a lot more than I used the any of that. So but when the rack sampler was required, it was an S950. I didn't get the S2000 honestly until years later when I didn't have the S950 anymore, and I'm having a hard time finding what I'm looking for. I didn't have the S950 anymore to rely on, and I couldn't find an S950 for a decent price, so I got this S2000, which is cool, but at the same time, it works different. The screen is a lot more limited. The menus are a lot more fucky to get into the menus. You know what I mean? So for me, it serves its purpose, but it's not very romantic because nobody gives a shit. Everybody talks about the S950. Yeah, gotta let it, right in the MP60, let the S950 squeeze your titties. Redman didn't say that shit about the S2000, right? So, what I do is I set these little discs up so I can knock them down, right? And so now this pile that I just kind of went through, these are all those ones that are kind of in the waiting, So when I'm doing my little workflow, I'll pull them out and I'll know that these are all ready to go, I hate to say it though, man, because I'm one of the last standing. But I got this new iMac recently, and I started editing WAV files on there because I just had to, man. I had no other way to do it that made any sense, and it was so goddamn easy. You know what I mean, man? It's like it was just so fucking easy that it made me feel like, Jesus Christ, you know, I should have been doing this the whole time. But I don't know. I'll never really love that shit, but it was a lot easier than what I normally do. Envy, use the you can't overdrive the inputs on the S950 and 900 like the S2000. Yeah, that's a good point, man. That's a good point. The other way around. Yeah, that's a good point. I never used the 900, you know, but I heard good things about that. But I never used the 900. You know, the memory thing here is cool. My only issue with it is sometimes when I'm loading the settings, you know, I'm not Mr. Computer. I'm not Mr. Machine Genius, man. Sometimes I end up loading the settings and the shit will be wrong, and I'll have to try to figure out what the hell's going on with the MIDI. Back in the day when I had the S950 and the MPC, I mean, not the MPC, the SP-12 Turbo. That was the shit, man. I don't know if you ever thought about that, but what's great about that setup is like the SP-12 Turbo, you get the 5 seconds in there to get the SP sounding drums, right? But then you can use the S950 for like the long samples. So all you really need from the SP is like the drums and the sequencer with the swing. And that's kind of like it was a cheap way to do, like kind of like have something that had more memory than an SP-1200. But nowadays, I don't know if you noticed, but they're all going up so high that it almost feels as if you don't already own one of these machines, you're never going to get one, you know? That's a damn shame. I got to change the turntable needle. So I'll be back in a minute. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get any further today. But while I dash to try to do that, maybe I'll put up something a little nice for you guys. I love you more and more each day. The things you say to me seem to help in every way. If you walked out on me, I wouldn't know what to do. I was so glad I felt the world. I found you. I don't swear. I know my baby glad. That thing inside my head just refused to take a chance. I found you. I found you. I found you, baby. You and I will make it through. I wrote the song especially for you. The ones that just don't fall, but the song is all for you. What I think can be summed up by the moon is up for me. I'm in the race, but it's all mine. Trying hard to win. I don't regret. I'm always holding on. That thing inside my head just to feel the thing I'm I found you. I found you. I found you, baby. You and I will make it through. Extra SP-12 and SP-1200 buttons, man. Yo, $4,000, man. $5,000. That's crazy. You know, it's kind of crazy, man, because, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, the CRT monitors. Yeah, that's a bitch. Yeah, that's true. Peace, man. You know, so the whole thing, man, is with the CRT monitors, any of this old technology, I mean, it's getting so obsolete now where it's like, you know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was looking to replace my original SP-1200 that I had back in the day, I'm talking early 2000s, like 15 years ago, like 2002 or something. It was like $1,000 and my jaw dropped. You know what I'm saying? It's like I couldn't believe how expensive it was, because when I got rid of mine in like mid 90s or late 90s, when, you know, they're stupid. We thought that because the MPC 2000 XL came out, we were never going to want or need our old equipment again, right? We didn't realize, you know, how valuable it's going to be. People were giving them away in pawn shops for like $400 or $300 and stuff, man. And, you know, then it became like, okay, it's $1,000, right? And then after that, you know, you got the issue of, okay, well, you know, now they're 1,000. And then every year that passed, you know, 1,500, 1,800. And so I bought mine, you know, I rebought it and, you know, had it restored probably around the time they were about $2,000. And then I watched them just go up and up and up and up. I gave my homie Custodian of Records an SP-12 Turbo, that I paid maybe $1,000 for back in the day. And I was like, hey man, I got an SP-1200 again now. Go, enjoy, man, take it. And then I'm like, motherfucker, because now I'm looking the thing up on eBay and it's worth like $4,000, man. I had no idea it was going to be that expensive. Oh, you're talking about the CRT monitors? Yeah, it's a bitch, man. It's like we're actually creating Smash Brothers cabinets right now, if you can believe it or not. We're at the very beginning stages of next summer's project, which is going to be Smash Brothers cabinets. And, it's pretty cool because it's like a wide body Nintendo cabinet, similar to like a Donkey Kong or a Mario Brothers, but wider. And, everybody knows you have to have GameCube controllers inside, in order to play Smash Brothers Melee, right? So the whole cabinet's designed like a Donkey Kong machine from like the early 80s. You know what I mean? Like a Nintendo cabinet, an early Nintendo cabinet, like Donkey Kong, using their old art style and everything, but using the new characters, that are in the Smash Brothers game. The most popular one, Melee, the one was on the GameCube. The way it works is you got these GameCube controllers that are kind of holstered onto the machine. Pretty fresh, man. It's definitely something that we've been busting our asses on with the design and the build. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because, we need to find two 25-inch CRT monitors. And, it's not that big of a deal. 10 years ago, I could get one for $50. And now it's just like $600. And you never know when these things are going to crap out on you, man. And I'm not as technically skilled as I would like to be. I've been trying to learn it since I got into speed running. What do you mean? Oh, you mean in video games. All right. Yeah. Melee is, that's a fighting game. Do people speed run fighting games? I know that people speed run a whole lot of, I know people speed run like, Castlevania and Metroid and all that type of shit, and like platforming games. I didn't know people were into it with that. But yeah, I didn't know that people were speed running that type of shit. I guess you could, right? Like Soul Calibur. Anyway, what I'm doing, I signed on live. Kind of speed running. Oh, Ocarina of Time and stuff. Yeah, I know people that do that shit too. That's dope. I've seen that go on. Yeah. Oh, the GameCube controllers. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ours is going to use the GameCube controller because the thing is that you got to remember there's this whole community out there that still competes on Super Smash Brothers Melee. You know what I mean? It's this whole community of people that are still to this day holding these big competitions and everything like that. The only way you can play the game really well is on a GameCube because Nintendo made it super fucking difficult to emulate, right? So as a result, anybody wants to play it, it's on the original hardware. So we've got to use that for the machine. But, any 4 people could walk up to it, play with the GameCube controller, but there's a restrictor on the other end. So they set it back down into this little holster that's on the front of the arcade machine. So it's permanent, and that way you can have 4-player Melee, walk into an arcade, have 4-player Melee, and it'll look like a finished machine, because what they do with those tournaments is they use like old ass CRT TVs and hook up GameCubes to them and just sit there and play like it was somebody's floor in their living room in, 2001 or something, So I figure we're in the business of doing these old school real deal cabinets. Why not? Right. It's because people, I'm in my 40s, but people in their 30s, like early 30s and late 20s, that's their nostalgia shit. So, whatever. When Smash Brothers came out, I was trying to, I was my 20s, man. I played it, but I wasn't 10, latency than the LCDs too. Yeah. But it's not just that, man. It's just like, everything about them is more appropriate for the purposes. You know what I mean? Everything about the CRTs, anytime we use an LCD, which we have to sometimes, it's always a compromise, man. It's never it's never the preferred thing to do, yeah, it's just like these old machines. I think what it is technology got really, really, really sterile over the years. And, if you want to kind of get that nostalgia shit perking up in somebody, then what you got to do, man, is like really, really give them the real deal stuff. So it strikes that emotional chord. You know what I mean? When they're coming in to see the machine, or even with this hip hop stuff, if people can try to use these new machines and my beats aren't great at all. You know what I mean? I probably got 10 great beats to my name after 30 years. I'm not a good producer, but I do have an appreciation for the old equipment because even if it's not a perfect beat, it's kind of like it's still going to sound like it was made in the 90s. You know what I mean? It's still going to have that flavor that you're used to. So it might not be like, the most sonically, it's the best sonic achievement, in hip hop, but it, might nod your head like the old, because it's being made with the same tools, with the same restrictions. So I like those, keeps you in that zone. Because let's face it, man, look back, listen to some of those old hip hop records from the '90s and the late '80s, early '90s. You know, these guys were pioneers, but some of the beats on these albums that we loved were not that well produced. It was just the first time you heard the sample, or the producer did a really, really good job, maybe choosing two different samples. Like, and let's take like a really good example, like even like Passing Me By. That's a brilliant record, but it's mostly brilliant because he was the first person that had the idea to take those samples and put them together, the Summer in the City joint, and just perfect marriage of samples. Nowadays, like, whole different landscape because all the fucking samples are gone. I've still got samples, man, but it's just, I've used some of my best samples already. I think that I'm already, like, we're all of us are down the hill. I don't really love foreign records enough to sit and listen to them all night long, like soul music or something. So it's a little tough nowadays. But that's what I do this for. I kind of hook up these beats. I find the samples. I chop the samples. I put them in the library. And when it's time to get busy, at least I'll have something there to kind of focus on and have fun. Trying to get my shit together and make something out of nothing, a lot of the times. So I'm checking discs that I've worked on in the recent past and trying to edit, chop, and just get my pile together, because it's just a disc file. It's kind of, people that don't use these machines don't realize that it's also doubly difficult, because if you save a file onto, like, a sound onto, like, bank A, pad A, bank 1, and what you got to do is, like, when you save that onto a disk and you want to load it, if you want to load a sound all by itself, you got to load the same damn sound, man. So if you say load pad A, bank 1, it's loading that sample. So you'd better keep in mind. So what I have to do now is, when I'm creating these samples, I assign certain samples to certain pads, so that way I don't get caught in a situation where I've got all these drums I want to use in the first bank, A through 8, 1 through 8. I got all these drums in there that I want to use, but I can't use it because the samples I'm dealing with, like a dumbass, I sampled them onto those pads where the drums are saved on the other disc, if you know what I mean. That's like a pretty big challenge for me, man. I got to keep track of all that stuff. And that's fine if I'm working on something for 2 weeks, but if I'm touching shit from 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, and just all these boxes of discs, so over the last couple years, I've designated certain pads on here only to put kicks on, only to put snares on. You know what I mean? All that kind of thing. And that, I think that helps with the organization a little bit. I don't know. Speed running, man. Yeah. I'm not a good enough gamer of console games to really speed run anything, but probably back in the day I could have done that. I because of my business and because of my collection and doing that, I focus a lot on the arcade games and getting better and better at them. And they're challenging, man. So they keep me sharp and all that stuff. I really enjoy it. Run into that issues. Yeah, the NPCs run into that issue too. The 62 is the one I spent the most time in my life on, and I got a pretty sad story about that NPC. I'll tell another day. And it just, as usual, it's like me getting my ass handed to me by somebody else trying to do a favor, and never getting it back. The dude's like ended up installing a zip drive in the damn thing. It was like the one that my don't get the wrong picture here, man. It wasn't like my dad had very much money at all when I was a kid, but because he was trying his best to operate the studio business, he bought an MPC because he was making money off the sessions, not very much, but and so he bought this MPC 62, and I learned how to use that myself when I was like 14 years old, and it was so hard for me. It was so hard. I'm not gonna make pretend I was like RZA, like overnight I taught myself. It wasn't like that. I was looking at the goddamn book for weeks and weeks and weeks, trying to problem solve, figure out what the hell I'm supposed to be doing, man. And it's just like, it was a very difficult thing for a kid to learn, especially because at the time it was like cutting edge technology. I had no background in anything but the SP-1200 and SP-12, which are both a lot easier to use, a lot less options, a lot less complicated, so. But yeah, the MPC 60, has a very similar problem with saving things, designating different pads. And because you got to do a lot of the, instead of looking at it on a big screen or some image, you got to either keep it in your head, or it's going to be in the menus, but it's going to be in like sound files are described. Not even a lot of room for you to put the whole joint. I think the 2000 XL is where it started to get a little easier. Like that's where the workflow of a person that's not that into this stuff could pick it up and just kind of, get pretty good at it. Yeah, trying to spend time getting a high score. That's what I do. I mean, the business is high scores, but also, it's just kind of part of the culture, the arcade joint. So anyway, I'm going to start going through these and see what I got from the last bit of time and kind of get some of these sounds organized, see if I could chop anything. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, man, it's like, yeah, like the first computers. Yeah, man, I had a C64 and it was written like translated from Japanese, I guess, or something, man. It was just in a way where the words and the sentences didn't even make sense, and it's so you're just like straining to figure out what the hell they're talking about, and the screen is so small that you already are not familiar with the language, and now they're using some dramatically small term with a few digits to describe like truncating. It's like CRT. They have all these coded words on the menus, and you're already not figuring out what does a 14-year-old kid know what the hell truncate means? You know what I mean? It's like, so then you got to learn the language of what the hell they're talking about, then the abbreviated language of that language, and then you got to figure out how the hell to access it with menus that have multiple shift style keys to make everything work. And that's all set to a backdrop of just like, it's almost impossible to figure out, like, and then the saving and the loading. You remember the saving and the loading? This doesn't take that long, this SP, but that fucking MPC 62, if you were loading like a two disc joint, that shit took forever. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I got some sounds to chop. It's getting pretty late. I promised that I would do this about once a week. I know I didn't have a very substantial session tonight, but I'm going to continue on myself and stop boring you guys. But yeah, like once a week, once every 2 weeks, I'm going to get behind these boards. I'm going to work on some things. And one thing I will say is that, yeah, the Lin was in Japan, I think, but it's all I know is that the Roger Lin joints, whether or not he was in Japan or whatever at the time, I mean, it seemed like a Japanese centered product. It seemed like a foreign, product, and it didn't have the same level of US friendliness as like a TV would have at the time or something. You know what I mean? And honestly, what do you have to do to get a fucking TV working? But these things are these complicated machines. But yeah, man, I'm gonna sign on about once every week. I don't know if it's gonna be every Tuesday or not, but I'm gonna try at least once every week, every 2 weeks. Hopefully I'll be doing something more interesting next time, besides just the chopping up. In fact, I'm going to be setting the stage for this kind of thing. And next time I cut this thing on, instead of me like doing all this, like, busy work type of stuff, I'm going to get it going where I'm actually going to put a beat together and try to sequence something live, because I think that'd be fun to do. And, that'd be fun to do. And also, it'd be something that challenges me too, gives me, gets my blood pumping so I don't fucking make an ass of myself and not come up with something cool at the end. Like I said, I'm not a great producer anyway, but, I love using these machines, and I've got like a stockpile of samples that I've just been fucking with over the last 6 months or so for this project I'm working on with my man Basti. And, so it's time for me to kind of dig deep and start, making something out of that shit. So, I'm not rusty necessarily, but I will say, man, that I would love to have a better organized setup here with my discs and with all my sounds and all this shit. I've just kind of put it down for 6 months or something when I was working on my EP project with the rapping, and now that I'm digging it back up, I'm kind of disoriented to where all my damn sounds are and all this shit. So I got to spend a couple of nights in here myself, just kind of getting comfortable again. Yeah, man, I appreciate that, MV. And anybody else that's watching, that's interested in just kind of bullshitting with this, you're always welcome. Come on through and check it out, man. I'll have more interesting ones than tonight, but I'm going to just go live. That's my philosophy. I'm just going to start going live.